I got a song to sing, I got a story to tell, I got some words to write, I hope they find you well. I got a song to sing, I got a story to tell, I got some words to write, I hope they find you well.
My name is Anthony Bain, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with the executive producer for the longest running music series in television history.
Welcome everybody to Austin City Limits.
Mr. Terry Lickona. And thank you so much, Terry, for being here.
Happy to be here, Anthony. How are you doing?
Hey, doing very well. You know, you've been really inspiring in a lot of ways, particularly your journey to Austin and how you got connected with Austin City Limits. And I didn't know if you could kind of tell me how that came to be.
Sure. It was very serendipitous in a lot of ways. My background was in radio. I grew up in upstate New York, Poughkeepsie, New York, which is just north of New York City. And I was working at a radio station there at an FM radio station. And I was at that point in life, I was probably 25 or so, but I had the itch. You know, I just wanted to kind of strike out and do something different and go see what the rest of the world was like. And I had heard about Austin, mainly from just playing music on the radio. People used to call me and request all kinds of music, a lot of which came from Austin or Texas. So I took a road trip down to Austin in the summer of 1974 with a musician friend of mine. In fact, the reason we came down was to go to Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic. And I had never been to anything like that before. And I had never been to Texas in the middle of summer before. So that was a new experience as well. And my musician friend of mine and I sort of made a pact on the spot that we were both going to move to Austin. He was going to move with his band, and I was going to move to get a job in radio, because that's what I did. Well, when I moved here in November of '74, it took a while to land something in radio, but I finally got a gig at the Austin NPR station, KUT. And as fate would have it, KUT was in the same building. They shared the same facility as the PBS station on the University of Texas campus. And also, again, very serendipitously, when I moved to Austin, it was literally 2 weeks after they had taped the original pilot show for Austin City Limits. I had never heard of it before. Very few people had, because it was a brand new thing. And the original pilot show featured Willie Nelson. Now, I knew who Willie Nelson was from having heard his music back in New York. And I was really intrigued by this whole idea of TV and a music show on TV. And since we were all in the same building, it was easy for me to get to know the producers of Austin City Limits, the original producers. And within a couple of years, I sort of got my foot in the door. I volunteered to help them out. It was a very bare bones operation. There weren't much staff. And as an assistant. So they made me an assistant to the producers, which meant I did whatever they needed me to do. But then a funny thing happened. Literally within about a year, the original people left. The original executive producer, even the director. Nobody thought that this show was going to last. You know, they thought it was just kind of a pie in the sky quirk. And they were concerned about job security. They wanted something that they could hold on to for a little longer. And so all of a sudden, I saw an opportunity, a vacuum, if you will, it opened up. I was the one who had like the most experience of that group, even though I was just a lowly assistant, because the rest of them had left. So long story, it's already a long story, but to make it short, I walked into the office of the station manager at KLRU, the PBS station, and talked my way into the job. I basically convinced them at least to give me a shot, and that it would be a lot easier than if they hired somebody from New York or LA, and a lot more expensive if they did that. And so they did, you know. I became the producer. That was my first job in television. There are people I know, friends, who have gone to the University of Texas or other schools and have gotten an advanced degree in radio, television, or film. And I had none of that. I had a degree in history from college, and I love history, but I realized it was going to be hard to make a living with a history degree. So that's how I sort of drifted into radio. So that was in 1978 when I became the producer. Now I'm the executive producer. And I've been with the show for 43 years. I joke that I may have the longest running gig in show business. And honestly, it could be true. But I still love what I do. It's still just as exciting as it ever was. I love everything about it.
Absolutely. It's fantastic what it's become. And after your involvement, was it a conscious choice to go from showcasing Texas talent to going to more nationally known acts?
Yes, because I became producer in season 4. So by that time, the original idea of showcasing Austin or Texas or regional acts from that area had kind of run its course. I mean, frankly, the Austin progressive country, or some call it cosmic cowboy scene, had already started to kind of fade, or some of the original people had left. And besides which, we'd already had all of them on the show, in some cases, twice. So I just decided that if this show was more than just a quirk, if it was really going to have some legs and last, we needed to expand beyond just Austin or Texas or beyond our roots. So I think it also reflected my own tastes in music, which have always been very eclectic. So if there's a better example than this, I don't know what it is, but the very first show that I booked as the new producer was Tom Waits, who happened to be on tour passing through Texas. So nobody could be further from, Willie Nelson or the original concept of Austin and Texas music than somebody like him. But in my mind, he was just an amazing, very unique and original performer, artist. And to capture him on our show would have been a great thing. And it turned out to be one of the most popular shows that we've ever done. So from that point on, we started featuring New Orleans music and really going beyond just Texas and even beyond the US. Today, my attitude about booking is anything goes. If it's good, if it's something unique and original that stands out, then I think that's worth considering.
Absolutely. So that's the main criteria when you're booking. It's come a long way since $400 from Lone Star to get it started, huh?
I think we might have paid Willie something like $50 when he did the original pilot show, but we still pay all of the artists, no matter who they are. They could be a legend, or it could be somebody brand new working their first record. They all get the same scale, which is based on the Musicians Union and what PBS can afford. And it averages these days at about $500. So we've come from $50 to $500 in almost 5 decades.
Well, I've heard you describe the show as a show that's purely about the music and the community that it creates. And, post-pandemic, how do you feel that we can maintain that community going forward?
Yeah, it's been surreal, not just for us, of course, but for the whole world. Everybody's going through their own experience with the pandemic right now. We just resumed tapings within the past month. It had been 7 months since the last time we did a show back in February. And so far we've done 4 tapings. We have 4 more to go in our current season. No audience. That alone makes it very surreal to do a show and have an artist or a band come out on stage and just play their hearts out to an empty room. Well, the crew is there. There's a handful of us who are there, of course. But the show has one of the things about us sometimes is the magic that happens in that room when there's somebody on that stage performing, and the room is full of enthusiastic fans, people who really love to be there, and it comes out. There's a certain connection in the room between the audience and the artist, and just the fact that we're able to capture that and then share that with the rest of the world, I think is part of what makes Austin City Limits work so well. So now, without a live audience, we're relying on the audience out there, and by that I mean the audience who's been watching over the years on PBS, but also we're streaming all of these shows, live streaming all of our tapings. And then they're all posted on our website, PBS's website, so that people can watch them and share in that communal experience anytime they want to, basically. No, it's no longer tied to when it happens to air on your local PBS station. But that being said, there's nothing that compares to having a live audience, a real audience in the same room with the artist. And I'm afraid we have lost, well, there's no doubt we have lost that aspect of it for now, but I don't believe it's a permanent thing or that music is going to suffer in the long run. And I could go on and on about that. It's going to be a really interesting transition to watch once we come out of this pandemic that we've all had to live through. And when that happens and how it happens and what the future holds is, there's lots to speculate about.
In my opinion, just watching that Rufus Wainwright episode, for example, the first one that you did without an audience, it still maintained a level of intimacy that added a different element to the show, in my opinion, and it was still just as fantastic.
I would agree. In fact, we had no idea what to expect when we did the show with Rufus. It was definitely his story. In all of our years and decades, we've never done anything like that. And it was really emotional. As part of the way we do it, I introduce each of these live streams to the audience at home. And it's almost like, we're coming into your living room. And so I wanted to, make people feel welcome and then give the artist Rufus a proper introduction. But it was really kind of an emotional feeling for me personally, the first time we did that. But I think to give credit where it belongs to Rufus, he is the type of artist who could make that work. He had also had some experience doing live streams before he came to tape our show. But he had the ability to connect with the people who were watching and with his own bandmates. And his sense of humor, I think, also did a lot to help us get through that kind of weird first hour without an audience.
You've had the opportunity to have a front row seat to so many icons over the years. I know it's impossible to pick a favorite, but especially now that you've been able to go back through the archives, and do any particular performances stick out over the years?
Oh, believe me, there are a lot of them. I think the most important part of my job, I've always believed, is booking the talent. And so I've had a hand in that for all of these years. I got lots of advice, and, we talk amongst ourselves, the staff, as far as who our priorities should be from one year to the next. And everybody from my neighbor to my plumber, will ask me, why haven't you had so-and-so on? Or they'll recommend somebody. But I take a lot of personal responsibility, and hey, I don't bat 1,000. There are some shows over the last 40 plus years that I look back on and I wonder, what was I thinking? Or whatever happened to them anyway. But the shows that stand out the most to me are the ones where somebody's talents are so unique and special and original that they just stand out, by the nature of who they are. And that includes so many people, whether it's, Willie, who's been on the show time and time again over the years, somebody like Tom Waits, somebody like Roy Orbison, B.B. King, Johnny Cash, Ray Charles, and I could go on and on. But if I really had to pick one show, and there's a lot more to it than just he was an amazing guitarist, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Just the fact that he was from Austin, certainly that's where his career started. And the way that he died so tragically when he was really just beginning to hit his peak as a performer, as an artist, which was a real tragedy. And the fact that it was his last major TV appearance a year, I think, before he died, maybe less. made that particular show stand out. And he represented so much of what Austin stood for and what Austin City Limits stood for back at the time, and on to the present. But that being said, if people ask me today what my favorite shows are, I tend to think more about the ones that we just did within the past year or within the past couple, 2-3 years. And as we have continued to branch out and expand, stretch the limits of the talent on the show, and have started including more urban and hip hop acts, Kendrick Lamar is a great example of what I was talking about. Someone who is very unique and original, and in that genre, I think is the best at what he does. So the fact that we were able to get someone like him to come and do our show, I think is also, a testament to, the show's broad appeal, way beyond where it began.
I agree completely. I had the pleasure of being at that show, and
You were in the audience, but you could feel it in the room that it was a special.
absolutely. But even walking in, you feel that history immediately as somebody that's in the audience, and especially with Kendrick having that full band experience, that was something unique and certainly special. So I look forward to the years to come. And I do want to ask you though, what was that first spark? What was your first concert that you went to?
Oh, my first concert. Well, yeah, I've been asked that question before, and I remember it very well. I was a student at the State University of New York in Albany, and my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, was going to the same school. And if I do say so, she was light years ahead of me, when it came to music. She knew who the Beatles were even before I paid much attention to them. But so she was the one who asked me to go to a show, and it was Janis Joplin. She was playing at some armory building in downtown Albany, New York, and it was an experience unlike anything I'd ever had before then. I'd been to some smaller shows, but nothing on that scale, and nothing as kind of wild and crazy as seeing Janis Joplin back in when was that? 1968, 1969, about that time. So, and doing it with my sister, sharing that experience was really special, and we've continued to be really best friends ever since.
Oh, that's great. Post-pandemic, especially with you opening the vaults for Austin City Limits, it's given us the opportunity to kind of escape and watch those old shows. Are there plans to expand upon those seasons and have those available in the future?
That's always been a goal, a dream of mine personally, and we've just now finished the process of digitizing our vast archives. And, I'm not just talking about the thousands of edited episodes from the last 45 years. We have digitized all of the original recording masters, both the video and audio, from so many different formats. And we've gone through every format, since they invented videotape. And so it's been an enormous undertaking to do that. So the question now is, what becomes of these digitized programs? My personal goal is that someday they'll be available and accessible to everybody. Anybody who wants to go and, look at a song or an entire episode of Leonard Cohen or Johnny Cash, or just a particular song, whether they just want to screen it or even to download it for some sort of fee. That's also going to be an enormous undertaking because of the rights. And that's the difference between broadcasting a show on PBS, public television, versus putting something online where it's, we're basically exploiting it, commercializing it. We would have to charge something just because of the expense of building and maintaining all of these programs. And that makes it complicated because we have to get clearances from the music publishers, from the artists themselves, from the record labels, their original record label at the time the show was done, and their current record label if they still have one. And then there are those artists who have passed and are no longer with us. So we have to get permissions from their estates. So you can see where I'm going here, how complicated it could be. But I think what we have working in our favor is the goodwill that Austin City Limits has generated and built over the years, the trust that we have, not only with our audience, the people who watch the show, but with the artists who've done the show. I can think of very few exceptions, very few artists who came away from the experience doing Austin City Limits and not being happy about it, not loving it or considering it to be a milestone in their careers. I think it tends to bring out the best in people. When they set foot on that stage, they know it's more than just a PBS music show. They realize that this is something for posterity, or this is something that, is maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity, who knows? So they really make it their best.
I did want to ask you too, because you have a variety of different types of artists. Like behind you, I saw the Iggy Pop poster, for example. When you have an artist that tends to have some spontaneity in their sets, or somebody like Jack White, for example, and you have to plan out and map out a show, do you allow a little bit of room for that spontaneity for somebody that doesn't necessarily work with a set list all the time?
Yes, and I think our longtime director for the show, Gary Minotti, is one of the best when it comes to, shooting by the hip, being able to call the shots, so to speak, as a director without necessarily even knowing what's coming. Ideally, and he would agree 100%, we like to go through the entire show in rehearsal that afternoon, and Gary has the opportunity to script what his camera shots will be, if there's a guitar solo, or when the choruses and verses come in and who's singing back up, et cetera, and it makes for a better looking show. But there are artists, when they come into the room in the afternoon, they'll say, I don't want to rehearse, I'm afraid about my voice, or I had a rough night last night, so I'll do 2 songs and and then I'm done. And we don't want, the last thing we want to do is put any pressure on them. So if that's how they feel, we'll roll with it. And Gary and his camera people, who've also been working with him for many, many years, some of them, they manage to pull it off. And sometimes I think being under that extra added pressure might even make for a better show. I've joked with Gary sometimes about how sometimes his best shows are the ones where he didn't get any rehearsal at all. But he does his homework. If he doesn't get a full rehearsal, he'll go online and search YouTube until he can find some video that some fan shot at a concert of a song, and he'll make his notes based on that if he couldn't get a real rehearsal in our studio that day. So we definitely try to give the artists as much spontaneity as they need. And for them, some artists, having a rigid set list, it's just not their thing. That's just not the way they work. And their band sometimes has no idea what the next song is going to be. So it depends from artist to artist. Certainly one thing I've learned over the years is that each and every one of them is different. And that's what sets them apart and makes them special.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Terry. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I just wanted to ask you one more question, if I could.
Sure.
What albums and artists are you listening to right now?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because in the past week alone, we've lost 2 of the artists who represented what Austin music was back when Austin City Limits first began. And as you may have guessed, I'm talking about Jerry Jeff Walker and Billy Joe Shaver. And so for the last 3 or 4 days since Billy Joe passed away, I've been listening. I have quite a vinyl collection, as you might imagine. No surprise there. So I've been listening to a lot of his music, and some of Jerry Jeff before him. So that's in more of a nostalgic vein, obviously. I tend to listen to, whatever is new. And that includes, singles that are dropping from one artist or another. Billie Eilish has a new single that just came out. I was listening to Rufus Wainwright's new album when it first came out as well. There's a new record that Leon Bridges was due to release literally in the next couple of weeks, and which has now been put off until 2021, as has been the case with so many artists. New releases. Everybody is, trying to put 2020 on hold and ride this out and wait till 2021 and then hope for the best. So, I still spend a lot of time listening to the radio. I love KUTX. It's definitely my go-to radio station for new music. I love especially the Left of the Dial program that Rick McNulty does on Friday nights. So that's where I hear not just new records, but new artists I've never heard before. So I'm the kind of person, maybe a little unusual for my generation. I'm not really that interested in listening to the music that I grew up with or that I listened to when I was in college, as much as I am the new stuff today, whether it's a new artist or their new album. That to me is more challenging and eye-opening and ear-opening. I don't want to just dwell on the past as much as I may love Janis Joplin, Bob Dylan. As I said, the stuff I grew up with. I really want to hear what's out there today. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people watch Austin City Limits as well, is that they want to discover new music. And they know that we're a great and trusted source for that. I've heard people say many times to me, I may not like country music, or I may not like this or that, or I've never heard of her, but I figure if they're going to be on Austin City Limits, they've got to be good. So we try to live up to that standard.
Well, you definitely do. And thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate you taking the time, and you be well, sir.
Thanks. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Ooh, I love the posters behind you. I've got a good collection myself.
Well, I have done a lot of different Zooms and some interviews, as you might imagine. And actually, this seems like the perfect background. So it's my Austin City Limits poster gallery wall. I have quite a collection of them. I don't have enough walls to put them all up. But
yeah, my wife tells me the same thing. I think I have 60 in my collection.
oh, no kidding.